Yep, we are live.
Hi everyone. So we're back. It's another Power Addicts. I hope you're ready for some fun. Tonight we're going to have some app demos. We're going to do a little bit of magic with Rick Buckhart, who's currently sitting in the Netherlands at midnight. He's a proper Power Addict. He's up late. He's basically told everyone, I'm going. You go to bed. You guys are quitters. I'm going to stay up with the cool kids and smash this out. It's going to be awesome. And then we're going to kind of try and embed some stuff into SharePoint. We're going to try and make a custom form quickly. And then we're going to transform. We're going to transform from Power Apps. And we're going to take our Power Apps hats off. We're going to stick our Flow hats on. I hope I got that the right way around. Yeah, I did. And now we're Flow. And Anton's got his Flow t-shirt on. I've got my Flow t-shirt on under here, babies. Yeah, so we're all good. So we're Flow to the core. So Mr. Levesque can't have a go at us and say that we don't ever talk about Flow anymore.
Right.
So without further ado, Rick, man, the floor is yours, bro.
Okay. Let me start sharing my screen. So I'm Rick from the Netherlands. Really like Power Apps, as some of you perhaps already know. So share the screen. Whoa! I don't know what happens here. Stop sharing.
I think this.
I saw a lot of. Let's try it differently.
Yep.
What do you see now?
Yeah, we can see the PowerPoint.
Ah, okay. Because well, I knew it was going to be late, so I give myself a little bit of help. So what I want to talk about. So I'm going to talk about an application I built for a friend of mine. He's a manager for a department with roughly 50 employees, and he wanted to, well, have a better insight of the capacity planning. So that's about what I'm going to show you. So the concepts are not that difficult. There you have the employees. And you have the jobs, and you have the employees are connected to the jobs. Well, actually, there were two approaches possible in theory. You have a definition and you record only the changes, or you record all the weeks, because the minimum resolution should be an insight at the days per week. And actually, the first one, I really couldn't get it working with Power Apps, but the second is, which means that I can assign weeks to employees and weeks to jobs, which you see shortly. And there is an overview. That's actually the main part for him. But of course, he also has to do the administration part. So I'm going to show you how it looks like in SharePoint Online. Do you see SharePoint Online right now?
Yep.
Okay, great. By the way, Vivek, should I see you? No, right? I should see my full screen now.
Yep, we are seeing your screen.
Full screen.
Yep.
Okay. So actually, what I tried to create in SharePoint was a little bit of an relational database, where you have the employees here, the list with the jobs, and there you have the list with the employee and jobs. But to make it working, and also for the delegation restriction, I had to do some segmentation of the data. So I had to segment it in years. So a job was always related to 1 year. So if the job spanned over years, it became 2 jobs, which was not really a problem for that friend of mine. But I think that's good to know. I have to segment the data. But here you can see there are a lot of lists, which contains the data. And this list currently contains no data, because I'm going to do a live demo, and that it really works this way. There is an administration app and there is an overview app. Let me show you the administration app. And to give you an idea, I made it like in you do the addition, and in SharePoint you do the updates. I could have made it also that the updates were should be done in PowerAddicts, but then it should have taken me more time than I had, and this was time for him. So addition was in PowerAddicts, so it was inserted the way it should be. So this is the way to insert an employee. It's not that difficult. It's just a full name, the days per week that the employee is working. So 4 days or 5 days, or I could add a company, I could add a job. And here you see the week begin and the week end. And it's week 7. And I will show you later on how I calculated this. I think and this is the one I will show you also in the designer. Here I will assign the jobs to the employees. So first you have to select the year. And there are currently only jobs in 2019. And there is the list of jobs. These are sample data. These are actually from a local user group, the DWG, which I use for the data. That are a few topics, and I also wanted to show you what you can see here, how it handles large titles. What you also see is that I'm working with panels. So the panel with the years shifted to the left, and I'm going to show you how I did that. And another panel popped up, and in this case, the panel with the employees. Well, as you could see, there are light blue and dark blue, and actually the light blue means it hasn't been assigned yet. So this is a job. The job has been defined, but the weeks aren't assigned yet. If you can remember in the beginning, I said there were 2 options. You have a definition and you have only the differences, or you have for all the weeks assigned. So and that's what is done in menu option 2 and 3, which for the brevity I will not show now. Perhaps if there's more time we can show it. This menu actually is well, it only has 6 options, but it's scrollable because it's a gallery. But let me go with this one. It's often a friend of mine. He presented this one, and if I now another panel shows up, and in this with the summary, it's the year, the name. Yeah, is it good? Okay, assign. And so now I'm assigned to this job, and so this means that when it's done, I will go back to SharePoint and refresh. Employee and jobs. It contains 24 items because this was a job for 24 weeks actually. Believe me. So now, but I also try to make it a little bit idiot proof. So when I want to assign it again to me, it says, okay, it's already assigned. And I will show you how I did that. But for instance, Robert, the job could be assigned to him. Why not to Rene? Well, Rene hasn't been assigned the weeks yet for 2019. So that's it's something you have to get to know of, but you will pick it up quite easily. So this is the functional part of the administration app, and now let me show you how I did that. Going first back to the slide at data. Yes, I want to show you this one. Yeah, the strange thing, I have to first remove this one, because actually this is on the home screen, and when you go to here, it automatically goes to screen 1. No, never mind. I want to show you the invisible, and here a lot of things happen. The menu is collected, but I wanted to show you several SharePoint lists, the companies. I try to make it well, as performant as possible, so I collect the data and then work locally in the app. But let me scroll you to this one, because this is actually the way I calculate the week number. Let me first show you the week. If I'm talking too fast or you have questions, just ask, right? Because I cannot see the panel because I have a full screen, but I can hear others. So here you have a list, and actually this list contains the weeks and the year number, the year, and the start date and the end date. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually going through all the a list of week numbers, which was given before, and then I will check if it's there. If it is it in that week, then it gets the value of title, and title is like this, week 26 or 24, and in other case it doesn't zero. So I do it, and this way I then have a table, and then I sum the table. So and there should be one row with only that week, and the rest should be all zeros. So I do a sum of everything, and then I say 1, 2, well, 26, for instance, if of week 7, like it's now. And so I calculate, and the rest is 0. So I calculate what is the current week. There is no function for that at the moment. So this was well, the way I made it, what I made it by my own, but the idea I got from somebody from the community. So the community is very good for IDs. On visible menu settings list. Yeah, there is also a settings list. I like working with setting lists, and it contains prefixes for numbering. Okay, I leave. So okay, yes. Then let me do the control Z. Okay. So this is what I've shown you before, and as you can see in the menu, I have this one option stand out, and that's because in the visible I have something called a variable active menu. And when I select this is actually what I mentioned, this is a gallery, and when I go to the fill, it say when this menu item is for active menu, and when I set the menu, I also give it a number, then give it this well, fill, and else the default blue. And these, they are, I have a screen here which I have some definitions, so it gets it from there. So that's the way, and that's more intuitive, that people remember. Oh yes, I was in the assigned employee job. That's how I did it. Then how did I do with the panel thing? Let me go to the office. Oh, I was still on the invisible. Let me scroll down here. Well, actually, I have a variable for every panel, and here you can see I set the panel 3 and 4. They have an X of 2000, meaning outside of the visible screen, which you perhaps can see here on the right. You still see something. So that's actually what I'm doing. There is a panel, there is an X, and the rest is all relative to that. Let me show you. We have here the gallery. It's on panel 2, so it's the X of this gallery is the far of the panel plus 20. So that's how you can have the panel ID. So when I go to the, for instance, when I click on a gallery item, let me show you. I changed the variables. So I got a little bit inspired by the Azure portal panels about it. Let me show you a list. Yes. Then there was the thing. How can you make? How can you calculate that? Sometimes the job should be darker blue or light blue, meaning if it's already has been assigned. Well, actually, what I'm that's why I'm having multiple lists. For instance, when I assign an employee to a certain year, I add it in this list, and in the formula, and I can imagine it's blah, 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 this one. In the let me show you the this one. Going to the color. Here it checks if it has year details, if it and that has been calculated before in the invisible property of the screen, and if it has year details, actually if there is a row, then well, make it so, or else give it another color. And this logic is also this logic is also used for the on select. So in case it has year details, then you can do something. And then it's active. You can say that. What I wanted to see, yes, this is year details. Well, I also showed you how the employee is already assigned functionality. So how did I do that? Let me first. And then I have to use the F5. Okay. Okay. When I the on select of this gallery record, there is this this formula. So actually, what I'm doing, I'm really, and I must say, and this one also. Here it starts here. So our first lookup is in the employees and job list, and then I select the year which has been chosen. Then I select the job ID which has been chosen, and then I select the or filter on. I must say I filter also on the employee ID. And then if I get a result, that means that that job has already been assigned before. So and if it's not, it's 0. So actually 0 means, well, you can assign it. Non-zero means you cannot assign it. Let me show you how I'm now clicking on so here you have the assign button, and when I for the display mode, here I have it. The var count number of items is 0. Okay, then it's enabled, or else is disabled. So that, and there is also here an error text, which also has the same logic. Okay, I mentioned there were 2 apps. So there is also an overview app, and actually that's was the most work, and I think from a user experience perspective also, well, personally I like it. Let me show you that one. So I'm opening it. So for the people who perhaps already saw the tweet of mine, this is without a navigation bar. That's one way I use it. Okay, so it's actually quite simple, the overview at the moment. It's only from a perspective of the employees, not the jobs, because employees was most important for my friend. You select the year and you select the day of the week you start, and it can show you 9 weeks, because else it wouldn't really not be responsive anymore. And then you click on process, and then it will do a lot of calculation. And this also has to do with the fact that it's for 50 employees, which could have multiple jobs per week. Not all, but some of them. So it could get a lot of data. So I again had to segment. So actually what I did, it will show you later. But this is how it looks like. And when I go to the R, you see already this is taking a little bit longer. You see here the Rick Bakker, I assigned the job, and it says 2. And that means that it was a job of 2 days per week. And I work 4 days a week, which in fact I really do also. So here you have the insight for the manager, and where yellow means in week 11 there is an issue for Rick, because he should be working 4 days and he's only working 2 days. Well, when it's equal, in this case 0, 0, it's blue, and actually when it's there was 6, the color would be red, because my friend says, well, then I'm overburdening my employees. That's not good. So I like that approach. That should be red. Okay, how does this app look like? Actually, it's all in the process button. So in the there does happen something in the on visible. It collects some data, but the main logic is in the process. And well, to show you, I do a Control A, Control C, and then let me open Visual Studio Code. And then you will show the amount of lines I have used for this. And as you can see, 821. So that is actually quite a lot. And perhaps if you look here on the right, there are two, you can see 2 sections here. The first is, it goes, let me show you some. No, I can show it, of course, in PowerApps. Here you have for week 1. So do, if the selected week is week 1, then do some calculation. Or get me some data, I mean, and put it in the, and also for week 2. And so, and this all has to do with the delegation, and that I had to segment the data to not cross some boundaries. So I've do this for 53 weeks. Let me done. So then I have a really big collection, and then I'm going to use that collection. Let me scroll a little bit back for week 1. And week 1 is not the really week 1, but the first week, which is shown. So I mean, let me. What I mean, oh, I can also switch to this one. So in this case, week 7. So here it does in that part the calculation of so how many hours or I mean days should I be able to work, and how many days have been assigned to me. And
I'm just going to jump in and ask a question here.
Yeah,
so
sure.
That's a heck of a lot of code, right?
Yeah, so that's too much. That's actually
and that's what I was going to ask. So how did you find working with that huge volume of code? Like, because that's without line numbers and folding code, that's quite a bit to manage. You know, best part of 700-800 lines.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it took me I did it in my own time for that friend of mine. I don't think this app is really commercial ready. But you have to be working very structured, and then it's doable. But it took me a lot of time, yes, because the last thing I want to show you about this app is here you have the calorie. And actually, it contains 56 controls, just to show all 9 weeks with all the things. So that's why it's also a little bit sluggish, but still it works. It works well enough for my friend, and I also have given him a demo with where the SharePoint contained much more data to test the performance. But yeah, it took me really a lot of time.
Did you find the concurrent function helped a bit, or not really, because it was one thing after the other? It was more.
Yes. That was to be honest, I'm not sure if I've done it in this one. But that's when I showed it to somebody previously. He also mentioned the concurrent, but I'm not sure if I already. You have to write this one.
Okay.
I'm aware of it. Yes.
I think 700 lines of code is pushing the boundaries of no code, low code. I think that's definitely code.
Yeah. This is code. This is a lot of code.
Yeah.
Good question. How many users are there? I mean, how many people are using this?
Actually, the friend of mine, somebody who's able to work with him for this. So 2 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much has it saved any time, money, paper, anything like that using this?
Well, it's currently he can already get statistics, but it's in SAP, and it shows a lot of more data, and it wasn't as actually this helped him really because it was quite more intuitive for him to work with. So yes, there was a little bit more administration work for him, but he gained the insight over via PowerApps. And the idea is also that in the second phase, we're going to use Power BI to show the data in SharePoint. And then I'm not sure if we're going to use this app anymore. But to be honest, I also saw it as a challenge, like how far can we go with PowerApps?
Absolutely, and you learned so much as well at the same time.
I think the KPI there of how far you went with PowerApps. I think you went through PowerApps and then some. I mean, that's a beast. You know.
To be honest, don't try this at home. This is what it's for him. I would do it again that's because it's such a good friend of mine. But actually, it's no, I wouldn't do this commercially.
No. And how did you get on with SharePoint delegation? Because that's always like the one thing everybody always. I know you split everything up into chunks.
I have to split, and there is a maximum of the amount of employees it can support, and it depends also on the amount of jobs per year. So he gave me, there are like the half of the people, they have like one job for the whole year, and the half they have many jobs. So then we calculated, and then we came to about 80 employees at the maximum. And that was fine for him, because he knew his team wouldn't get bigger than that. It would only get smaller because of offshoring.
Yeah. And then you start to sort of break it down into more than one team and all that kind of stuff. So you can start to do that. That's cool, Rick. Well done, man.
Yeah. Perhaps if I have my last minute, I want some of you have already. Oh, this one seen it. I'm going to make a vlog about it.
Oh yes.
I've never done a vlog, but I did today because I knew I was going to present for the PowerAddicts. I did a little bit of optimization. So here you have the grid for the memory. It's just a memory game. Now I've also added the arrows, which are actually quite difficult for me. At least more difficult than animals. So I did a little of UX, like this is more clear, and the idea is well, the memory game. Now the system is frozen, and now you can. Yeah, I really. To be honest, I play a few games per day now, but I'm going to make a vlog about it, so people, the community, everyone can see this.
Yeah, I like that one, Rick. I think actually that's got quite an interesting value to it, especially with the focus on Alzheimer's and dementia and all that kind of stuff. Like those memory games are so super important. So yeah. I say build it out. Go and look at a charity that's working with that sort of thing. Find out what sort of tests they do. Build an app around it, man. That would be a great demo. And yeah, that'd be awesome. Awesome stuff. Well done. Thanks for coming on. That was brilliant. Any other Power Addicts got any questions? I was sticking them in the chat, and any of the ones we got online. Anyone got any questions for Rick?
So I did have one question for Rick.
Yes.
The fact that he used so much code, were there any tips or anything that he would like to share that could have made it a little bit easier to navigate through the code?
To navigate through the code. Well, I think the code it's not that difficult to navigate if you understand it, because that one big chunk of code, because that is easy, to be honest, because it has actually two things it does, and for the more there was more in other parts, there were it was more complex, because I had to get data and then collect a table, and then with add columns I have to add extra data, so I could, visualize something. So that was more complex. Yeah, and perhaps as a last thing, I also had to add some redundant data for it to be performant. So the employee and jobs list that contains the column for the employee ID, but also the employee name, because else it wouldn't work.
Okay.
So because SharePoint is not a relational database, right? So I abused it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. So
hey,
I hope you enjoyed
really
the demo.
I really liked how you have your naming convention for the controls. You have several galleries and several controls within each gallery. I like how you have the naming convention, which includes part of the gallery name, and then it has the actual activity or action that control is going to do, and also the type of control. I think it makes it easy to search and navigate, especially when you need to make updates.
That was really essential. That's a good point, because that was essential for me to be able to work with it. Yeah, so I started it from the beginning, and it helped me a lot. Indeed, good point.
Hey, Rick, just one last question.
Sure.
When you had any issues, I mean, first question, two parts. How long have you been doing Power Platform stuff? And if you, anytime if you had any issues, where did you go?
I think I'm doing Power Platform for, well, it started 1 year, I think, and a half ago. So like 18 months. Mm-hmm. And I think I really start working with it, I think 3/4 of a year. The question is, what do you do? First, I checked the community or I check but often I check the information pages, how does a function really works, and then I first try a little bit of in small, so in how it should work in small, and then then I add a step and another step until it becomes the complex function as it sometimes becomes. And sometimes, yeah, when it just doesn't work, I have to say it doesn't work. I have to think of some. I have to say, well, okay, it's not going to happen, or yeah, I think that's how I do it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yep. Yeah. Kind of starting slow and kind of building it from there, and then kind of, I mean, I guess all of us probably do some things like that, but yeah, it's good the way you put it. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
I try to think ahead, how on paper how I want to do it, but in and it helps indeed. But in practice, there you always comes to you run into something that you have at that moment. Think, okay, how can I'm going to deal with this? So
great.
Perfect.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yep. No, thank you.
Thank you. That's no problem, man. Thanks for coming.
And girls, ladies, of course. Yes.
All right. So, Keith, do you want to take over and show us?
Yeah. Let's do some embedding, shall we? So, we've been talking a bit this week. We do a lot of demos of a lot of apps, don't we? You know, we're kind of forever demoing. We're forever demoing apps all the time. But one of the functionalities that we see being used increasingly is PowerApps as a solution to SharePoint. So I know some of the guys who are on the call today are SharePoint devs, and whenever I look at into the murky world of SharePoint development, right, it comes up with this big box at the beginning, and it like directs me to these scary looking Microsoft docs. And the first thing it starts doing is it starts telling me to sort of like install Node as an IDE, and then like NPM stuff, and I'm like, okay, so now I've got to go and learn JavaScript, and someone's now talking about embedding a C# MVC in something else over here, and there's this other Node thing over there, and I'm like, that's not what I wanted. I just needed to make my list look pretty. That's what I really wanted to do. So one of the functions that you can use is to embed your app. So let's have a look at that. So I've got a list here, an absence list. So this was part of the Happy School project that we built with a kind of, you know, these kids have been off school and you know, some have been naughty, some have been nice, and it's about this sort of like this SharePoint offering that comes up over here, which is this is the default kind of SharePoint thing. And one of the bits of feedback I got from one of my users was if there was a lot of text in this details field, when I actually came to view this record, so there's two ways to get to this record. There's a link that you can get that takes you directly to this record as a web page, and then there's coming into the list and actually looking at the record, double clicking on the record to get to this page. And it was a bit of a bad experience. Like, it's very, very vertical. So SharePoint's either like really horizontal or really vertical. So I'm having to scroll across to get stuff. I don't really like the way that you can't, you know, I want to shrink these columns down. I want the same level of control that I've got in Excel. In SharePoint, I haven't got that. So I want to make it look sexy. I want to make it look expensive. So what you can do is you can click on customize, which I've already done. That's why it sort of disappeared. But it's so customize forms, and that will launch your Power App. So you get like the screen come up saying it's building an app and all that kind of thing. But for time, we've done this. So what you end up with is not quite the full ticket. You know, it's not quite ready to go. So you end up with title and you end up with a field, and it's normally just these two things. And it's kind of going to say, right, we're going to go from here, and we've got a form on the page, and the form's the first thing we're going to see. Okay, all right, that's fair enough. The title, well, we weren't bothered about that in the app because we kind of got rid of that, so we can just go in and kind of kill that off. First name, yeah, okay, right. I can see why that would be a useful field to have. But let's stick some more fields on, and then we've got this wonderful new add field function here, which I'm in love with. But hey, look, it's still one thing after the other. So now we can start thinking about maybe saying, right, let's make this twos up, as it were. So let's give this and say that you know, there's 2 columns and we'll width fit stuff. So now I can start compressing things onto the screen and start getting a really good user experience in here. And so we'll just put a few more bits and pieces in. So we'll have some details. We'll have like the date of absence and maybe, well, I don't know, the parent email, right? So these things are all going to come in now. So we've got this. This is a rich text field, so we'll have to convert that to like a HTML field for it to appear properly. So I don't think you can do that in this because it doesn't let you, which is a bit frustrating. Oh, here we go, rich text, edit rich text. Does that say view rich text under there? Yeah, there you go. And so there we have it. But we can make that smaller just by making that as a HTML text field rather than, I can't see it because it's under this sharing thing. And so when I save this is going to go back into the app, but I can do all sorts of other cool stuff on top of this. So I've got a parent email. So I could have a button and I could make this email the parent the status of this this app. So let's bring the status field in. So here we go. We'll go for status. And there she blows, right? And that's going to add it at the bottom of the app. And that's kind of a little bit boring, like it's just down the bottom. So what we could do is there's 2 ways of doing this. One way is you can kind of point it at the record. The other way is you can drag it out of the form. And almost pointing at the record's easier. Now, when we talk about SharePoint integration into Power Apps or vice versa, there's this SharePoint integration thing at the top up here, right? Do not delete that. Don't play with it. Just leave it alone. It's there for a reason. That's what's kind of making it all work. So that's the kind of the magic sauce that's bringing this into SharePoint, actually embedding this app into SharePoint rather than the other way around. What we can do is we'll just we'll stick a little label at the top of our app. That's probably going to look a bit better than the status thing down there. We'll give this text box a name, so we'll call this like follow the naming conventions, and we will hide that. And then we can grab this and say that is equal to label status.text. And then we can have a little, do a little bit of indentation, all that kind of jazz. But we can stick a fill on it that is dependent on what type of text it is. So let's say that if it is LBL status.text equals approved, then we'll have some green text, some green, and if it's anything else, we'll have it red, right? So now we can kind of like start to see that now as a piece of UX, we've got something that looks a little bit nicer for the user when they come in. So now they've got a visual representation of what's going on in there with the record. And the record will scroll underneath that if there's a load of stuff down there. So you could kind of put a few other bits and pieces up here. You can have like a tick icon and all that kind of stuff. But the point is that this now connects to a load of other data sources. And you can kind of run flows off of it. You've got those 230 connectors you can play with. So all of a sudden, this is that C# MVC node integration that use like a whole bunch of code to do. Now, I don't know if Anton or Vivek or one of the other amazing SharePoint people on the call want to say how long that would take if you had to do it in code. So, you know, if I'm coming to you and I'm going to buy that off you guys, what are we saying in terms of length of time to create it?
There we go. So The first thing is the fact that if we wanted to do this inside of SharePoint natively and use the modern experience, we go through a lot of code by using SharePoint framework. So and that takes a lot of knowing the back end as well. So it's like this is a drop in the sea compared to how long it would take for you to do it natively. This is so quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I've found. And so publishing wise, you can kind of jump back to SharePoint, come in, you save it, you publish it to SharePoint. That's done. You can see your versions here. It's a little bit cut down. Some of the things you can't do, you can't save as, you can't export an MS app file. You can't kind of like bring one in either. But we could do, you could still build stuff in here. So you've got the ability to post something from here onto Yammer. The list is just absolutely endless. So it's only limited as usual with Power Apps by your imagination. So, go and do stuff. There's no reason. And I'm not saying that Brian should go and do this, but wouldn't it be cool if you had the data source on the left on the list and Power Apps on the right playing the game from the data source? I mean, that's just, I just keeping Brian up late at night, giving him something to do. But yeah, like it's just absolutely phenomenal. And when we come back to our site, we can start. What I didn't publish it. Hang on, I need to refresh the page. We go back to SharePoint.
So Keith, would this work if, like in SharePoint, if you have this list shared with external users, will they be able to use the Power App?
If they were external users, do you know what, Keith? That's a really good question. I don't know because I haven't got any.
I don't think so.
No, I wouldn't have thought that. I wouldn't have thought it would. But that's a really good question. Yeah.
I did something with Microsoft Teams and external users and Power Apps, and that just didn't work. So I expect the same here.
Okay, that's a fair point. Yeah, so I mean, like we're in and we're live, and it's once it's done its initial kind of load, it's actually fairly quick to kind of
but look how clean it looks, and look how clean it looks, and how effective it looks as well. Yeah.
It's just much better, and we spent like 5 minutes on this thing. If we'd juiced it up a bit, it would be you could be basically building a proper Power App in there. And you've got access to barcode scanners and blah, 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 blah. Like, come on, the world's your oyster. So, yeah. So obviously, the web barcode scanner, not the Cordova one.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and that's also the fact that a lot of the, visibles and putting some validations around it, you can also do that too. So where some users were using InfoPath to hide columns or things like that, you can still do all of those functions by using the Power Apps and some of the different properties that you have available to you.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, if you've ever edited rich text in SharePoint, you'll know that this is an absolute bind. We've set this as a view column only, but if this was the edit column, you could just edit straight in there. And when you're doing rich text in SharePoint natively, the UX is not great at all. You've got that bloody great big window that turns up. There's all sorts of tabs at the top of it, and I just want to write what I want to write and go. I don't want to have to be clicking on save buttons and all the rest of it. And blah 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 blah. So it's just, what's not to like? What's not to like?
And you can be so creative as well, like you said, Keith. There's so much you can do with it. It makes it fun as well to do.
And I think like that whole experience where I was scrolling up and down before through the metadata and everything. This is just so clean. It's like you can concatenate fields together. You can really just bring the whole bit together with what you already know in Power Apps. I think it's awesome. And long may it continue. That link as well, and that's a nice segue into our next bit on Flow. This is the status field, the approved, rejected, pending field. Having that link to come back to the SharePoint record. So before I was doing that, I was using the parameters function and passing that when I was doing SharePoint stuff as well as CDS stuff. When you do CDS stuff, you have to go back to the Power App. But when I'm doing SharePoint stuff, I don't need to worry about spinning the app up and passing in some sort of GUID as a parameter into the app to get back to that record. I can come in and I can share the link with you on the rejection email or on the approved email, whatever it is, and have that as a reference so someone can go and look straight at the record and see what was done with it. So yeah. So shall we talk about everybody's favorite subject this week of flow?
Yep, let's go ahead.
Let me stop sharing. So, what's everyone's?
Ooh, we have John on the line. He's on the chat.
Hey, John's on the chat, man. He wants to see what we're saying. He wants us to make sure we're all saying that flow is awesome and it's great and all the rest.
And if you guys didn't notice, Keith just changed his hats from Power Apps to Microsoft Flow now. So
yeah, I'm a man of many hats. So I'm going to jump in there. So I think, like, you know, number one thing for me with Flow, almost more so than Power Apps, is that, like, the docs are a little bit on the tricky side. So, like, you don't really need the docs to start off with in Flow, right? Like, Power Apps, you kind of need the reference to start off with, but Flow's sort of really straightforward from the get-go until you get to expressions. Then you need the docs. And there's one particular doc that, like, but you know, the Flow team have been great. They put little links in there and just follow them, like actually like kind of copy and paste them out. There's this link to the time zone codes that Flow understands, and when you start doing stuff with dates, man, you need to find that web page. We'll post it on the chat below. But if you haven't got that and you start typing in GMT ain't a thing, man. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one for me was a kicker.
So the one which I mean, so recently they started this peak code feature in Flow, and they talked about this in the Flow Pro show today as well. And I mentioned that a lot of times I went onto the peak code and I started trying to edit the code. But it's just view only, so now you can you can see behind each trigger or action, you can see the code behind it that's being used. Yeah, so I'm a man of APIs, so I wanted to change some things, but yeah, at least peeking it and seeing how things are happening kind of gives you a better idea. Yeah, if you kind of go from a low code to a bit of a developer, it's something that kind of gives you some more information on how things are happening behind it.
I just think they wanted to torture us for Vec, mate. I just think it's like one of those things where they're going to show you it. Like, here's what you could have won, but you didn't. Now we're going to take it and hide it away again.
Yeah.
I just want it, you know, my big ask, right, is I want a bigger expressions box. That's what I really want, you know, because that thing, when you start getting into really complicated expressions, is an absolute pain in the backside. It really is.
Yep. Being there.
So I suppose one other tip I'd like to share with expressions wise is when you actually start getting into it. So if you start kind of looking and building stuff and you kind of start making it quite advanced, is equality and like conditional statements within your flows. So if you start writing an if statement with the if function, with the control function structure, as opposed to writing it as an expression, when you come to write it as an expression, you're so used to, as a Power Apps person, in most other programming languages, you write if this thing equals this thing.
Yeah.
Then these two things happen. We don't do that in Flow. I found out the hard way after much head banging and punching the screen. you write this thing, brackets, and then equals and then some more brackets, and then the thing, and what it's supposed to equal, and then true or false. And that
so a tip would be, if you guys haven't used, I mean, for those on, I know most of us are probably using Notepad++, but if you aren't, try using that. Try create expression. I mean, use your curly brackets and the round brackets over there. Make the expression full. It gives you a color coding and everything. It kind of says, everything's fine, and then.
What linting would you suggest we use to get that right? The color, the colors. What would you say? Do you have to build a custom one in Notepad++, or is there one that kind of fits? That's like JavaScript or Python?
I think I can't recall now what was it, but
share it in the notes. I'll share it in the notes.
Yeah.
We'll remember. Share it in the notes. It would be good if Visual Studio Code did it, though, wouldn't it? In Visual Studio Code team.
Yeah. Someone's gonna be like, "Oh, you guys are just gonna complain about Flow, huh?"
No, we're loving Flow, man. We're like, Flow's where it's at. Like, I got so quickly into expressions, like, and I'm just loving it. You know, it's doing some amazing stuff for me. Someone described it as what happens when Flow is what happens when you're not sitting in front of your Power App. Like it's doing all that good stuff when I'm not there. So it's doing all the heavy lifting.
So the one thing with Flow, I mean, like I like the stop. I like that they added stop opposed to, and they also have terminate flows. So sometimes you write in the flow, you wanted it to stop, and before there was I believe it was terminate, but when you ran it, it completely like turned the whole flow off completely. So they added in stop, which was pretty good. I so love that one. But to piggyback off what Keith just said, when I first started using the Power Platform, after I got my first flow to run successfully with these different expressions in it, I thought the world was my oyster, and that's the same way I felt when I started using Power Apps. When I built my first Power App, and it actually did what I wanted to do, I was like, I was in the matrix. Like everything I see, everywhere I walk, everything is all about seeing, oh, I can do that in Power Apps, or I can do that in Flow. It's just the simple stuff. So yeah, it's an amazing tool, and it really boosts your confidence. And I'm done.
Anyone else wants to share their Flow tips?
Yeah, actually, I really like the commenting feature within Flow, because you can add comments for anybody who's onboarding or taking over the flow from you, or kind of documentation for you. So once they get started with the flow, they can actually look at what each action is doing, and you could also use the commenting feature to track your dynamic expressions as well. So I really like that. And a good tip, something that I've been using a lot, almost every flow I build. A lot of times as flow makers, you want to be able to deactivate or skip a specific action or a set of actions, just so you can test or debug later to find out, what's failing. I usually use a condition action, kind of set the condition to be something that would never turn true. Let's say like it's 2 equal to 1, it won't turn true, but I'll have all my debug actions in there, or actions that I need to skip, so that I can always go back in, flip that on, and do it. And a better way to do that would be to use scopes. So if something fails, you have a set of actions to trigger based off of what you'd like to do, send an email or set a variable. So you have a way to go back and see how you'd want to troubleshoot it.
And that's a great tip. Yeah. April, Flow MVP. Good to hear from you.
Well, I guess last, right?
Yeah, no, I don't know about that. No, but mine. I was talking with John Liu earlier today, actually, and it's a common misconception that people have, like you can't change the trigger after you create the flow. So a lot of people don't know that you can do that. So I guess that's my big tip. All you have to do is delete any reference to items in your trigger. And if you do that in the subsequent actions, then you can actually change the trigger. So like if you have a SharePoint when a new item's created, but you want it to be when a new item's modified and created instead, just delete any references to that, and you can actually go in and change that trigger. A lot of people think you can't do that. awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's a good tip. Yep. All right, I guess we are about an hour. So anything else that they want to share before we close?
I like the new feature of how you can. Yeah,
go on, Sam.
I was gonna say about how you can connect Visio and Flow, because we do a lot of process mapping and we use a lot of Visio, so I can see how Flow could actually use that, and it's good to play around with. It's good to when we hear new things about how flows can connect to other things. When you think, how would you connect Visio and Flow together? And like how can you connect Visio and Power BI together? It's great when Flow comes up with new things and new ways to connect things. Like recently, we were just talking about Microsoft Word and how Visio, how Flow is connected to Microsoft Word, and I like things like that because it keeps you learning. So those kind of things are awesome, and you just want to try it out.
Yep, that's true. Yeah. And if you want to know more about Flow stuff, just today there was a Flow Pro show that Sandy and I forget the other name.
Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel. They did the Flow Pro show today. I don't know if they have uploaded it yet, but yeah, that's also going to happen every month. So check that out. Get some more stuff on Flow from there as well. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Look out for the next video. I mean, we'll be doing it next month around the same time. We post it on Twitter. So till then, keep using Power Apps, Flow, and let us know if you want to share something with us. If you want to demo something, it doesn't have to be a complete functional app or a flow. It can be just something that you've learned. Your experience. We just want you to showcase whatever you learned. So this is the platform for you. Come join us and have some fun. All right. See you guys.
Nice one, guys. See you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.